An eldritch nightmare in Metroidvania form, Vigil the Longest Night brings brutal combat and papercraft animation to an elegant but horrifying world. Vanillaware meets Bloodborne, it offers punishing difficulty and genuine horror to a 2D world, tying the experience together with a lengthy amount of content and an involved, intriguing story with plenty of twists and turns. The difficulty at its core can be adjusted to be more or less forgiving to tailor the experience properly to all those who wish to delve further into the madness, and any intrigued player should have no issue finding something to love here. But that's not all you want to hear, is it?
I've been excited to play this title since the minute I saw it, and luckily for me, I was given a proper review copy of this game, so I can bring you this video well before it launches on the 14th. There's some spoilers ahead, of course, but nothing that's going to be major. I'm not giving away any of the really fun stuff, mostly because that's part of the early review requirements. Also, yeah, sorry, this is what I look like now.
I remember finding this game first on Twitter a long time ago, likely tweeted out by one of the indie game accounts I follow, and I managed to get my hands on the limited preview time to play the game for myself, in which I did a quick speed pass video on where I finally found out how bad my computer was acting while I was recording footage. Later on, when I saw more and more promo being announced and that release date crept ever closer, I went ahead and tried to ask for a review copy, and I was accepted. So yes, the game in this episode was provided to me for free, as per the request for being able to do the review before the game actually launches, so while there will still be some spoilers and tips for anybody who's looking to run this 100% blind, I'm not going to be going over any endings or any real major twists, save for one, but it's pretty early on.
Since this is a proper early review, if you want to jump in now, you're gonna have to wait 2 days to play it, but of course if you're watching it any time later than this date, you're fine, and feel free to pick it up right away.
I've talked about other games in this graphic style, and saying that such a style can be very hit or miss, but as this game goes, I find it very fitting for the most part. I mean, a few human character NPCs look really stiff and a little bit off, with a massive exception of Leila herself, who seems to be a well-detailed 3D model, which gives Leila a fantastic level of smooth movement and fluid animation. This also grants Leila the ability to visibly display the armor that she's wearing in addition to the weapon that she's using. However, this papercraft style, as I've learned this is called, works better here than in some games that I've played with it. I mean, it's a lot closer to Vanillaware's stuff than Icy's incoherent jumble of styles, without Vanillaware's rampant fetishism, of course. This game also bears not an unintentional resemblance to Salt and Sanctuary at times, especially as it has some crossover content with that game. The game also understands Eldritch horror. There's no Lovecraftian name drops here, but lots of disturbing visuals and a confusing but intriguing level of Eldritch and body horror, seen most often in many of the enemies. Bosses are especially nightmarish to behold sometimes, with a special mention going to the Broodmother, a massive insect-human hybrid monster who births out maggots with human infant faces. I've spared you that particular sight since I'm way better at the fight and know you're supposed to just take the eggs out now, but you can have that lovely surprise on your own. Being made in Taiwan, the translation is still a bit off. I mean, it's nothing outright English heavy or anything, and the sentences, while occasionally coming out a bit dodgy, are mostly coherent. But typos are everywhere and it might take you out of the game a little bit, especially with the many Dark Souls-style loading tips that'll show you different items within the game and their lore attached. Music in this game is great, and runs the gamut of atmospheric, mood-fitting, and is not afraid to rock out when it needs or wants to. The guitar theme that plays in the later wooded level is a real driving force for a very large section. The mine theme is just enough to unnerve you in this dark and cramped level, and the instrumentation and choir backing of other tracks really helps drive that mood. Sound also does well to drive the point home, even if stock effects will show up now and again. It's fair enough to use the bear roar for actual bears, but overall things do feel original and disturbing enough. Hearing the music go silent, and then entering the hallway where you hear Broodmother's scream for the first time is still pretty terrifying. The game starts out simple enough, as Leila appears in a cave, sword in hand, ready to return to her hometown and being guided by a mysterious hooded figure. Along the way you have tutorial tips appearing as golden auras on the ground that you can choose to interact with. It could be as simple as just telling you how controls work or what buttons do, as well as telling you what certain moves in your arsenal will actually do. This moveset extends out drastically as you level up and unlock skills within the skill trees, one for each weapon type and a general tree for overall character upgrades. Combat is a lot more flashy and fluid than the slow, deliberate hits of most Dark Souls-inspired stuff, with comboable attacks, special moves, extra movement options, and a very quick and generous dodge maneuver, coming in both backstep and dodge roll variety. That flash and fluidity is still limited by a stamina bar. And the bar is not as simple as just drain it and you can't attack, and it actually offers up a bit of a risk-reward system. When the bar is drained, it changes from blue to yellow, filling up instead of depleting. When the bar is yellow, your attacks do less damage, but it might be enough to finish off the enemy, or give you enough stamina to dodge away safely. If you do fill the yellow bar, however, you're punished pretty heavily by a stun that will seem to last ages, and it's easily a death sentence in most boss fights, especially on harder difficulties. Keep in mind, as a Metroidvania, there's a fair share of platforming. Control is tight and forgiving for the most part, and there's nothing like instant death pits in the traditional sense, but you will take fall damage if you drop from too high of a ledge, and even things like double jumping or attacking before you hit the ground as a means to halt your descent will not stop you from taking damage or possibly dying. Your momentum from falling is saved instead of reset. You can also grab onto higher ledges, either on the edge of a wall that you can just reach, or any platform that you can also drop through. I don't have the exact metrics on what the differences between easy, normal, and hard mode are, though easy does feel the most different. You probably won't be able to blindly button mash your way through it. It's still a more forgiving option than playing on normal or hard, though. Honestly, the way I play both normal and hard modes, I can hardly tell much of a difference beyond the enemies just taking more hits to kill in hard. Weaponry can have a vastly different feel in playstyle, since the basic types are swords, dual blades, axes, or bows. Although some of those categories are a bit of a misnomer, since axes can also be polearms or scythes, bows can be slingshots, and my favorite sword in the game so far is a cast iron frying pan. It's really unintentionally hilarious when you do an execute move on an enemy by skewering them with the large side of that pan. Each weapon type has a secondary function. Swords can block, dual blades can do a quick juke dodge, axes can charge for a heavy hit, and bows will swap their available ammo type. The skill tree of each will also unlock use of the heavy attack button later, which is context dependent. Sword users can use the heavy attack button to do a quick dodge slash, a downward smash if used mid-air, or an execution animation if they're standing next to a stunned enemy, for just a few examples. The skill points are earned one per level up, and any level up will also heal you to full. Despite sword being my favorite playstyle though, I am doing alternate runs with different weapons as a focus. The sword is the only weapon you'll have at the start of the game, and you'll have to take down a boss pretty early before you ever see another option. It might be pretty jarring to encounter something like this without even speaking to any other characters first, but it's a pretty big wake-up call for how this game might pan out for you. Bosses in this game feel pretty fair though. Some are obviously going to be harder than others, but their attack patterns can be pretty predictable and easily learned. They're well telegraphed as long as you can survive long enough to see them all through. Honestly, the sea monster horse thing is amongst one of the toughest bosses that I came across initially, as it has this annoying amount of defensive moves, but each boss should be fairly manageable as long as you keep your heals up. Healing is done in a semi-Dark Souls sort of way, in that you'll need to be standing still and press up on the D-pad by default to heal, leaving you vulnerable to interrupting attacks. You have a limited amount of potions, but they must either be bought or located around the maps. There's no Estus replenishment kind of thing at these save lamps. Any extra you find if you're full on potions will be sent to the storage NPC in town for safekeeping and easy retrieval, and potions are overall pretty cheap to purchase, so you shouldn't ever be in a position where you won't be able to top off before venturing out. Of course, as exploitable as this first boss is, if you're unprepared for it and burn off all those potions, you will go down pretty fast and learn just as quickly how dying in this game works. Shortly after the start, you will find a lamp with an owl on it, and that acts as your save point. These will restore your health to full, respawn any defeated enemies, and also act as quick travel points when you start unlocking more. What you'll also notice upon death is that you'll be back to the state that you were when you saved. Any unlocked shortcuts, level ups, or collected items will be all gone and you'll have to find them again. This in turn makes the death penalty a lot more unforgiving than most Souls-likes, so avoiding death is extremely important instead of being a likely inevitability by design. The only means around having to save without having to backtrack to one of those lamps and respawn everything are limited quick save items that you can use before or after a specifically tricky section. If you succeed at taking down the first boss, a small tricky section of heading under the fortified bridge will bring Leila back to her hometown in search of her sister. Things aren't going too well with the monster that you just fought already making things hard enough, but the mysterious disappearance of a village girl has now a lot more people on edge, questioning the motives of her acquaintances. Now that you're back in town, you can take on that investigation, among other mysteries, for yourself. From this point on, a bit more of the map is open to you, and many buildings of the town are available to search. You can use the notes you gather to check on quests you found. Note that quite a lot of NPCs might need to be spoken to multiple times before they'll hand over any gear or clues. Occasionally they won't have any new dialogue until you've spoken with another character, or obtained a certain item, or encountered a certain event. There'll likely be a lot of back and forth, and it's possible to give an important item to the wrong character, meaning that if you want to complete a quest properly, or get the correct item as the reward for a quest, you might have to reload a save or catch it on another playthrough. It's possible to get some items early, even if they're designed for being retrieved after you get movement options unlocked, which will probably delight speedrunners. Searching around, you'll have to find 2 more bosses, the aforementioned Broodmother, and after searching the catacombs and search for your sister, you'll find a portal that'll take you to an Eldritch Void and face off against the Ancient Guard. Defeating this monster is the only way out of this void, and the mysterious guide who's been appearing to you multiple times has one final message for you.
After taking out 3 massive harrowing bosses and traveling yourself through a hell dimension, congratulations on beating the tutorial!
Yep, as soon as you come to, you start out in the exact same place you started the game in, but no mysterious guide to be seen. Instead, you have 2 characters who are arguing with each other, indirectly letting you know that hundreds of years have passed. What's weirder about this is that certain characters will still recognize you. Is this the future? An alternate dimension? Both somehow? Why do people recognize you when others you met before are just gone? While the new NPCs will speak about those people as if they've been passed down in legends. Weirder still is that your sister is still around, admitting she's a bit older, but still recognizes you. Your hometown has a whole new set of problems as a plague has gripped most of the population. Your new task is to investigate the source of this plague, which could be anywhere in this far more open map. This map is a lot more massive now too, with areas far beyond those villages, valleys, and cemeteries that were dead ends of the original map. This is really where the real game starts, and it's actually interesting that you can investigate some of these new areas in any order, while also finding all sorts of non-guided areas to explore. I had concerns of what the game's length would be at launch when I was completing that very short demo, but this world is monstrous. Depending on how much time you devote to exploring, you may not reach one of the game's endings in over 10 hours of play. My recorded playtime on the save file is roughly 11 hours, and when considering that time is recorded on each save, and any deaths in re-exploration or failed attempts on bosses are all time that you would not see on that save file, in reality you could be looking at 15 to 20 hours or more of playtime. The story is interesting, if not properly eldritch, and therefore kinda confusing. Not entirely helping is this translation, which again, is dodgy but normally understandable. I'm not entirely sure if I'm having a hard time absorbing some of the dialogue, because it's mind-bending or just simply due to some odd word choices. Still, the strange feel of the world and the horror in general is on point. One of my favorite lines in the game comes from this character, and it gave me chills the first time I heard it. Granted, these bears are kinda silly looking for that kind of reaction, considering the horrifying design of so many other monsters, and the bears are really only intimidating from a gameplay standpoint, but I still love the feeling that line gives off. Keeping a dialogue with NPCs and completing quests is pretty imperative to getting a good ending in this game, too. I'm not certain exactly how many endings this game has, but I am pretty sure the state of the world when I left it, and the fact that I didn't collect all of a certain set of objects before taking on the final boss, likely didn't leave me with any choice to make this world a less harrowing place. Big oops there, but thankfully there is a New Game Plus. You get to keep all the levels, skills, armor, and weapons that you've collected, but you're without those key quest items until you've relocated them, and enemies are a lot harder to deal with to give you more of a challenge so you can't just raffle stomp everything with your last run's gear. I know I usually like to discuss endings and theorycraft on full indie stop videos, but since keeping ending spoilers and other big plot elements a surprise was part of the stipulation of getting a review copy, I'll obviously be keeping quiet here. What I can and will do, however, is give you a few tips about quest completions, because there is a few points of no return in the story where you won't be able to complete a quest line, giving it a permanent red X over the note as a mark of your failure. The first is obviously the time jump. When you find the portal at the end of the catacombs and see Play the Scarlet Ocarina prompt come up, do not play it if you actually have loose ends to tie up. Keep in mind that I am pretty sure you cannot complete Find Daisy until you go in, but you'll still want to collect all the ceremony items before you do. Same with Porta Avernus in the Vigilant trial. That portal is the Porta Avernus. The second big shift happens after you complete the Giantwood dungeon. I won't tell you what happens afterward, but there are quite a few quests that become unavailable after this point, so definitely leave that dungeon until last as long as you can. It's not something you'll be able to enter right away, since it's opened with 3 items that you need to collect. But be wary that just because you have those items doesn't mean you need to do that area right away. Also, keep in mind that the Porta Avernus is in the exact same area it was before the time jump, so using any ocarina you find on it won't teleport you to a new future again, and you can feel free to complete those before Giantwood as well. The final is an underground area of a building that you've likely been to more than a few times. It'll end up having an open door that was never previously accessible, with an extremely tricky dungeon. The final boss is located at the end of this dungeon, so if you have any quests that you haven't been locked out of yet, try and do them before you fight the boss, as this is a real point of no return, and you'll be tossed into New Game Plus after defeating it. Of course, if you know of any other quests to collect and solve before these time jumps, feel free to coach me on them in the comments. I've played the opening section of this game like 5 or 6 times now, and I still have no idea where Mukhtar's went, and I end up leaving that part unsolved every single time. Even logging back in to verify things for this review, I was still locating entire areas and bosses that I didn't know existed up until that point. And looking over some of these achievements, there's probably even more I've yet to discover. So, even though I said I had an 11 recorded hour and likely 15 actual hour first completed playthrough, it could potentially be even longer if you're trying to 100% this.
As enamored as I was with the demo for this game, the final product was even better than I was hoping for the amount of content alone. The recommendation here should be very obvious, as this is unquestionably a go recommendation from me. If you wanted more out of Bloodstained or the Soulsian feel of Salt and Sanctuary, but you still had to have some more accessibility for your playstyle, I cannot recommend Vigil: The Longest Night enough. It's a fantastic atmosphere, fascinating world, and some properly intriguing challenge in one of my favorite genres. I honestly can't wait to start streaming hard mode playthrough on launch day. And if you plan on picking this up, or end up picking it up for yourself, let me know what you think. And seriously, if you find where Mukhtar's is hiding, please let me know where he is. I've completely exhausted my options there.
Wow, it's been a while, huh? Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to actually make a full indie stop and put so much effort into something when YouTube just doesn't want to show it to anybody anymore, but enough of that woe is me garbage. If you're not following on social media, specifically Twitter, and basically only Twitter, you can find me at ChaosD1 if you're wondering what I'm up to, or at InD1, whatever the hell I wrote there, stop. Where I'm really at, and especially if you don't know what I look like anymore, go to twitch.tv/ChaosD1. Like, seriously, go there. Follow. Most of my time is spent on Twitch nowadays anyways, it's a much preferred platform for me, even if it is going about as well. If you want to contribute more to the pity party, head on over to patreon.com/ChaosD1, where there is actually an early access episode that has been hidden for about a week and a half that only the patrons can see. I'm sure I'll release that one in about a week. Gotta give this thing time to breathe. As far as full indie stops go, don't hold your breath, but we got a lot of speed passes coming, and there's some games that I'm passionate enough to do some videos on. So stay tuned and we'll get more out there for you.